Dear friends, settle in with your coffee or tea, because what I'm about to share will remind you why we should never judge a book by its weathered cover. This happened 3 years ago in a law office, not unlike the one where you might have signed your own mortgage papers or drawn up your will. It involves a 72-year-old widow named Eleanor Whitford, two grown stepchildren who thought they knew everything about inheritance, and a lawyer whose hand started shaking when he read the fine print. Sometimes the greatest mysteries aren't found in detective novels, but in the quiet battles fought in conference rooms, where dignity meets greed, and where true wealth reveals itself in the most unexpected ways. This is about what happens when we assume we know someone's worth based solely on their silence. Harold Brennan had been practicing estate law for 37 years, but his hands had never trembled like this before. The September afternoon sun slanted through the conference room blinds, casting prison bar shadows across the mahogany table where three people sat in various states of anticipation. Eleanor Whitford traced the wood grain with her index finger, following the dark swirls as if reading a map only she could understand. Her stepson Mason sat rigid in his Italian suit, jaw muscles working beneath skin that had seen too many business lunches and not enough sleep. Victoria, his younger sister, drummed her manicured nails against the table, tick, 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 like an expensive clock counting down to something inevitable. "Just sign it," Mason said without looking at Eleanor. His eyes remained fixed on the oil painting behind her head, a landscape of mountains his mother had painted the year before the cancer took her. Harold cleared his throat, adjusted his reading glasses, and flipped to page 7 of the document. That's when the color drained from his face. "Mrs. Whitford," he began, then stopped. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple, despite the air conditioning humming at 68 degrees. "I need to ensure you understand what you're signing." Eleanor looked up for the first time in 20 minutes. Her eyes, gray as February sky, held something Harold couldn't quite place. Not fear, not anger, something else entirely. "I understand perfectly," she said, her voice steady as her cursive signature. She had taught penmanship for 30 years, and her hand didn't shake now. ELEANOR-HITFOORD flowed across the signature line like water, finding its level. Victoria snatched the papers before the ink dried. "Finally, Dad's entire estate, the house, the company, all the investments." She smiled the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes, the kind she'd perfected for customers at her boutique who couldn't afford what they wanted. Harold loosened his tie. The October 1st deadline loomed in the subsection he'd just discovered, but these two had no idea what they'd just inherited along with their father's assets. "The obligations," he whispered, fingers fumbling with subsection 7's. "There are obligations attached to the estate." Mason finally looked at him. "What obligations? Dad ran a successful import business for 40 years. Harold's voice came out strangled. $8.2 million in personally guaranteed bank loans. $11 million penalty to European suppliers due in 2 weeks if you can't deliver the shipment your father committed to. 3 workplace injury lawsuits that could total $18 million. An EPA cleanup order for $3.8 million. The ticking stopped. Victoria's hand frozen mid-tap. "That's—" Mason's mental calculator worked frantically. "That's over $40 million. Eleanor stood slowly, the way she did everything these days, deliberate, measured, without wasted motion. She picked up her worn leather purse, the one she'd carried since her teaching days. "You wanted everything Thomas left behind," she said quietly. Now, you have it all. Mason jumped up so fast his chair toppled backward. You knew about the debts. Eleanor paused at the door, hand on the brass knob. Outside, through the frosted glass, the normal world continued, phones ringing, secretaries typing, the coffee maker gurgling in the break room. But inside this room, time had crystallized into something sharp and brittle. I need 3 days, Eleanor said without turning around. There's a garden shed behind the house. Some things of mine to collect, and I'm taking Spirit. Spirit, Victoria's voice cracked. The dog. He's 12 now. Arthritis. Won't be any trouble to you much longer. That's it. Mason's face had turned the color of rare beef. You destroy us and just walk away with a dying dog. Eleanor turned the knob. I'm not destroying anything. Mason, I'm giving you exactly what you demanded. The law calls it consideration. Both parties getting what they bargained for. Harold watched her shuffle toward the elevator, her comfortable shoes silent on the carpet. He'd seen many things in his career families torn apart by greed, love turned to litigation, children becoming strangers over money. But he'd never seen someone sign away their security with such strange peace. Victoria grabbed the documents, rifling through them desperately. There has to be something else. Hidden accounts, offshore money, something. Your father was very thorough, Harold said carefully. Everything is listed, every asset. He paused, professional ethics warring with human decency, and every liability. Mason slammed his fist on the table. The water pitcher jumped, sloshing. She planned this. That gold-digging witch planned this. But Harold remembered Eleanor's eyes, those gray, deady eyes that held no malice, no triumph, just something that looked oddly like pity. 3 days? She'd asked for 3 days at the shed. Harold made a note in his calendar, though he wasn't sure why. Maybe because in 37 years of practice, he'd learned that when someone gives up $40 million in debt without flinching, there's always another chapter to the story. The September sun had shifted, and the prison bar shadows had moved across the table to where Mason and Victoria sat frozen. They'd gotten everything they wanted, every last penny of it. The question now was whether they'd survive the cost. Eleanor took the stairs down 3 floors, rather than wait for the elevator. Her knees protested 72 years of living made themselves known in every step, but she needed the rhythm of descent, the mathematical certainty of 1 foot after another. In the lobby, she passed the security guard, Walter, who always asked about her garden. Afternoon, Mrs. Whitford. Those roses still blooming. Still blooming, Walter? Even the old ones, if you know how to tend them. Outside, the September air hit her face like a blessing. Across the street, a mother pushed a stroller while talking on her phone. A businessman rushed past, coffee in one hand, briefcase in the other. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that upstairs, 2 adult children had just inherited their own ruin. Eleanor's car, a 15-year-old Honda with a dented bumper, sat in the parking garage like a patient friend. She'd sold her better car 6 months ago to help Victoria's boutique make rent, though Victoria never knew. The check had come from a small business grant that Eleanor had invented, and Harold had reluctantly helped her process. Spirit was waiting at her apartment, his tail still wagging despite the white around his muzzle, despite the cloudiness creeping into his brown eyes. She'd promised Rose all those years ago, not about the marriage that had been Eleanor's choice, her gift to a dying friend who worried about her husband and children. No, she'd promised about something else entirely. The drive home took 23 minutes. Eleanor counted them, the way she'd counted everything lately. Days since Thomas's stroke, Months since the diagnosis. Years since Rose had taken her hand in that hospice room and whispered through morphine haze, "They'll hate you until they can't." Eleanor had thought she'd understood what that meant. Now, pulling into her apartment complex, watching the kindergarten class play in the community garden she'd helped plant, she realized Rose had known something Eleanor was only beginning to grasp. Sometimes love looks like letting people fall. Sometimes kindness means allowing consequences. Sometimes the only way to teach someone to swim is to stop being their life raft. Spirit barked once from the window his eyes might be failing, but he knew the sound of her car. Eleanor gathered her purse, her keys, her resolve. 3 days to clear out the shed, 3 days to leave what needed leaving, 3 days to let Mason and Victoria discover what she'd known for months, that their father's empire was built on promissory notes and borrowed time, but also 3 days for them to find what she'd left behind, if they looked, if they cared enough to look beyond their anger. The September sun was sinking now, painting the sky the color of Rose's favorite lipstick coral with hints of gold. Somewhere across town, Harold was probably pouring himself a scotch, trying to reconcile what he'd witnessed. Mason and Victoria were probably screaming at each other, or at their lawyers, or at the universe that had suddenly revealed its true face. But Eleanor climbed the stairs to apartment 2B, where Spirit waited, where her evening tea waited, where the rest of her life, however long or short, waited. She'd done what she came to do. She'd kept her promise to Rose, though not in the way anyone expected. The garden shed could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, she had a dog to feed, cursive lessons to plan for tomorrow's third graders, and absolutely nothing worth $41 million in debt. And that, Eleanor thought as she turned her key in the lock, was the first real wealth she'd felt in 13 years. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Victoria's heel caught on the shed's threshold. The wood, soft with rot, crumbled under her designer shoe. Inside, September heat had baked decades of dust into a thick smell fertilizer and machine oil and something else. Rose perfume, their mother's perfume. Mason pushed past her, ducking under a low beam. A spider web caught his forehead. He wiped it away, fingers coming back gray with dust and sticky silk. 3 days she wanted, he muttered, for this. The shed measured maybe 8 by 10 feet. Pegboard walls held rusted tools trowels, pruning shears, a hand cultivator with a split handle, terracotta pots stacked in the corner, each one nested inside another like Russian dolls. A workbench ran along the back wall, its surface scarred with cuts and circular stains from years of water rings. Victoria spotted the notebook first. Brown leather, sitting on the workbench between a coffee can full of seed packets and a ceramic frog with chipped paint. She recognized the handwriting before opening it. Mason? Her voice came out strange, tight. He looked over her shoulder. Their mother's cursive, looser than Eleanor's teaching perfect letters. The ink had faded to brown at the edges. April War. Eleanor came again today, 3rd time this week. Brought soup in a thermos, still hot. Mason wouldn't eat anything since the seizure, but he ate her soup. She sat in the corner knitting, didn't say anything about the smell from when he couldn't make it to the bathroom, just opened windows and kept knitting. Mason's throat made a sound. Not quite a swallow, not quite a uckish. Victoria turned the page. May 3rd. Doctor says more chemo won't help. Robert sobbed in the parking lot. Eleanor drove me home. Showed the kids how to plant tomatoes. Victoria asked if she'd be our new mom. E said no. Said I was the only mom. She was just Eleanor. Look at this. Mason had found a shoebox under the bench, canceled checks, rubber banded by year. The amounts made Victoria's stomach clench. $1,000 monthly to Serenity Hospice, $1,500 to Dr. Patel's office, $3,000 to Mason's college when his scholarship fell through sophomore year, all from Eleanor's account, not their father's. Eleanor's teacher retirement fund, the memo lines written in that same perfect cursive for Rose's care, for Rose's children, for Rose. Victoria's phone buzzed. A text from her boutique's landlord. Final notice, pay by tomorrow or locks change. She looked at the checks again, the dates. Eleanor had been paying their mother's bills since 1999, 2 years before she married their father. Mason found the photograph tucked behind a bag of bone meal. Polaroid, corners yellowed. Their mother teaching Eleanor to deadhead roses. Both women laughing at something outside the frame, the date stamped June 10. "She knew Mom first," Mason said. The words fell out of him like broken teeth. The envelope had no name on it, just sat there on the workbench, cream-colored paper against weathered wood. Victoria's fingers left moisture prints as she picked it up. Inside a single sheet, Eleanor's handwriting, Mason and Victoria. "Your mother asked me to love you when you couldn't love me back. I have. For 13 years. The garden outside this shed, every rose there came from cuttings of your mother's plants. The white climber on the north fence bloomed the day Mason was born. The pink hybrid near the gate opened when Victoria took her first steps. I've kept them alive. I paid for your mother's treatment with my inheritance from my parents. Not your father's money, mine. The receipts are here not for gratitude but for truth. You deserve to know who paid, who cared, who kept promises. Your father knew about the company's debts 6 months ago. His stroke came the night after the European suppliers filed their claim. He never told you, neither did I. Some truths need their own time. Spirit is your mother's dog. She rescued him as a puppy 3 months before diagnosis. He's old now. Cloudy eyes. Bad hips. He won't last long. Please don't make him die alone. The shed sits on a separate parcel, Lot 4447B. Your mother bought it with her teaching retirement in 1998. Check the county records. She left it to my true friend in her will. That's me. It's worth $3.2 million now. Commercial zoning changed last year. I won't claim it. Eleanor Mason's phone rang, the sound too loud in the small space. His office, former office. He'd been let go that morning when news of the estate transfer leaked. Mr. Whitford. The voice belonged to James, his former assistant. Sir, there's been a development. The European suppliers moved up their deadline. They're filing for immediate asset seizure unless payment hits their account by noon tomorrow. The phone slipped. Mason caught it against his thigh. Noon tomorrow is Saturday. They're using Luxembourg banking laws. Sir, they can freeze everything, the house, cars, even personal accounts if they're linked to the company. Mason hung up. His thumb left a wet print on the screen. Victoria had walked outside. She stood by the rose bushes, her hand touching a pink bloom. The petals felt like her mother's cheek had felt in the hospital, soft, cool, already pulling away. A thorn caught her palm. Blood welled up, dark red against her pale skin. These are Mom's roses, she said when Mason joined her. All of them. Look. She pointed to a brass plant marker nearly hidden by mulch. Rose Whitford's garden, 99. Mason's phone buzzed. Text from Harold. Found something. Thomas had life insurance through the company. But if the company dissolves before claims are processed, the policy voids. Eleanor would have gotten $2 million. She signed it away with everything else. Another text. She knew. The policy documents were in her packet. Victoria's phone rang. Her landlord again. She let it go to voicemail. Then her biggest supplier called. Then her credit card company. The boutique's business account had been frozen, somehow linked to her father's company through a loan she'd co-signed 3 years ago when she needed inventory money. "We're going to lose everything," she said. Not a question, a fact, like saying water is wet or roses have thorns. Mason pulled out the photograph again. Their mother and Eleanor, laughing in this same garden. He looked at the roses around them now, taller, wider, but the same plants, the same roots. She kept them alive for 24 years, he said. Behind them, footsteps on gravel. They turned. Eleanor stood at the garden gate, Spirit limping beside her. The dog's tail attempted a wag, but his back legs trembled with the effort. "Forgot his medicine," Eleanor said, holding up a prescription bottle. "Needs it twice a day. With food. He won't take it. In peanut butter has to be cream cheese." She set the bottle on a fence post. Spirit sniffed the air, then hobbled toward the roses. He lay down in the shade of the white climber, the one that bloomed when Mason was born. "The lawyers called," Mason said. "Luxembourg. Noon tomorrow?" Eleanor nodded. "Your father knew they would. He tried to negotiate Tuesday before the stroke. Wednesday he was gone. You could have warned us." Victoria's voice cracked. "We're going to lose the house. Everything." "You took everything," Eleanor said. "That includes the consequences." "But you knew." Mason stepped forward. Spirit raised his head, a low growl in his throat. Eleanor put her hand on the dog's head. He settled. "Your mother knew, too, about your father's business practices, the shortcuts, the debts he was accumulating. She asked me once what I'd do. I said I'd let him fall. She said that's why she trusted me with you two." "Trusted you?" Victoria laughed, but it came out like breaking glass. "You're letting us drown." Eleanor looked at the roses. A bee worked its way through the pink blooms, legs heavy with pollen. Drowning is when someone pushes you under. This is just learning that the boat you stole has holes in it. She turned to leave. Spirit struggled to stand, confused whether to follow or stay. "Wait," Mason called. "The shed? The separate parcel. Mom left it to you." Eleanor stopped but didn't turn. She left it to her true friend. Yes. 3.2 million. "Go," Victoria whispered. "You could save us. Pay off enough to stop the seizure." Now Eleanor did turn. The afternoon sun caught the silver in her hair, the lines around her eyes. "I could." "Then why?" Mason started. "Because your mother asked me to love you, not enable you, not rescue you from yourselves. Love you." She looked at Spirit, then back at them. "The vet's number is on the medication bottle. He's going to need you soon." She walked through the gate. They heard her car start, the engine clicking like it always did when warm. Spirit remained in the garden. His breathing labored in the heat. Victoria looked at the blood on her palm from the thorn. Such a small wound, barely visible, but it throbbed with her heartbeat. "She's really going to let us lose everything," she said. Mason picked up the medication bottle. The label had another name on it. Typed below Spirit's, a human name. Eleanor Whitford. The medication was metformin for diabetes. "This is her medicine," he said. "She's been giving her diabetes medicine to the dog." He looked closer. Same drug name, different strength. The vet's label was pasted over a human pharmacy label. Eleanor had been buying the dog's medicine and putting it in her prescription bottle. Why, Victoria grabbed the bottle, the date, the refill number. She calculated. "She's been doing this for 2 years. using her prescription coverage for the dog because pet medicine isn't covered, Mason finished, and she couldn't afford both. Spirit wheezed, tried to stand, collapsed back into the mulch. His eyes, clouded with cataracts, searched for something, someone. He whined, a high, thin sound. The European deadline was 18 hours away. The house would be gone by Monday. The company dissolved by Wednesday. But right now, in the garden that smelled like roses and dying summer, an old dog was crying for a woman who'd chosen him over her own medicine. Mason knelt beside Spirit. The dog's ribs showed through his fur. How had he not noticed? How had he not seen his phone buzzed? Another text from Harold Eleanor just called. Asked me to tell you something. Check the roses for aphids. Your mother always forgot. Victoria looked at the roses. Tiny green ints. Sex clustered on the new growth, eating away at what their mother had planted, what Eleanor had preserved. We have to do something, she said. But she wasn't talking about the aphids. The crematorium's waiting room smelled like industrial disinfectant and old coffee. Mason signed the papers while Victoria held Spirit's collar, the leather worn smooth where tags once jangled. 3 days since the garden tours, 3 days since Eleanor had walked away. 14 pounds, the veterinary assistant said, reading from the chart. Says here Spirit was 32 pounds last year. Mason's pen stopped moving. 32 to 14. The mathematics of dying. Eleanor Whitford brought him in monthly. The assistant continued, flipping pages. Paid cash, always exact change. She looked up. Are you family? Victoria's phone vibrated against the plastic chair. 17 missed calls from creditors. The Luxembourg deadline had passed 41 hours ago. Their father's house, their childhood home, had a locksmith notice taped to the front door. We're nobody, Victoria said. The assistant frowned but took the signed forms. Would you like the ashes? Mason looked at the collar in Victoria's hands. Yes. Outside, October had arrived overnight. The parking lot maple trees bled red and gold onto windshields. Mason's BMW had been repossessed that morning. They'd taken Victoria's Lexus to get here. It would be gone by Thursday. She didn't come, Victoria said, settling into the driver's seat. We called about Spirit, and she didn't come. Mason held the small cedar box the crematorium had provided, still warm. She already said goodbye. Victoria's hands shook as she started the engine. The gas needle hovered just above $7 in her wallet. Mason had 12. Their credit cards were frozen, accounts seized, everything linked to their father's empire pulled into the Luxembourg judgment. Margaret called, Victoria said, pulling onto Riverside Drive. From the community center, said Eleanor collapsed yesterday. She's at Methodist Hospital. Mason's fingers tightened on the box. Collapsed. Diabetic episode. Margaret said she hadn't been taking her medicine. Giving it to Victoria's voice caught, giving it to Spirit instead. They drove past their father's office building, or what used to be his. A new sign already up, J.L. International Imports. 43 years of Whitford Industries erased in 72 hours. We have to see her, Mason said. With what money for parking gas to get there? Victoria's laugh came out sharp. We can't even afford to bury a dog properly. Mason's phone, a prepaid flip phone now, his iPhone confiscated with the office property buzzed. Text from Herald Emergency. Meet me at my office? Now. The law office parking garage wanted $8. They had to park 6 blocks away at a broken meter. Mason carried Spirit's box. Victoria carried their mother's journal, retrieved from the shed before the locks changed. Harold waited in the same conference room where everything had started. The September sun had become October gray. He looked older, his usually perfect hair uncombed. "See it," he said. On the table, 3 documents. Mason recognized legal formatting, but the words swam. "Your father had another account," Harold said. "In the Caymans, technically illegal, but beyond Luxembourg's reach. 4.7 million?" Victoria's intake of breath sounded like tearing paper. "But," Harold continued, "accessing it requires 2 signatures. Thomas's, which we can't get, and Eleanor's as the estate executor." "She signed everything away," Mason said. "No." Harold adjusted his glasses. "She signed away the estate. This isn't estate property. It's hidden money. Fraud, technically, the kind that sends people to federal prison. But it could pay everything. The suppliers, the lawsuits, even leave something for you to rebuild." Harold pushed the papers forward. "Eleanor has power of attorney. She could sign. From her hospital bed, she could save you both." Victoria grabbed the documents. The account numbers were real. The balance clear. $4.7 million. "Why would she?" Mason set Spirit's box on the table. "We took everything, accused her, threw her out." Harold pulled out another paper. "Because of this," a medical form, Eleanor's admission sheet from Methodist Hospital. Next of kin, Mason and Victoria Whitford. Relationship, son and daughter. Not stepchildren, son and daughter. "She listed us as her children," Victoria's voice cracked. "Has for 3 years. Every medical form, every emergency contact. You two." Harold rubbed his eyes. "She's in room 4, diabetic coma, as of 6 this morning. Doctors say 50-50 chance if she gets proper treatment. But she's uninsured now. Your father's coverage ended with the estate transfer. The hospital's charity ward is full. They'll transfer her to County General in 12 hours unless someone pays the deposit." "How much?" Mason asked. 15,000. Victoria laughed, high and hysterical. "We don't have $15. Harold stood. The Cayman account could pay for her treatment. The best doctors, private room, full recovery likely with proper care. He walked to the door, paused. "Or she stays in charity care. County General has a 40% mortality rate for diabetic comas in patients over 70. You want us to blackmail her?" Mason's voice came out strange. "Threaten her into signing, 'I want nothing'?" Harold turned. "I'm telling you facts. Eleanor can save your financial future by signing one document. You can save her life by paying for treatment, or you both let each other fall. Your choice." He left. The conference room's fluorescent lights hummed. Someone was making coffee in the break room. Smell drifted through the vents. Normal office life continuing while they sat with impossible mathematics. Victoria opened their mother's journal. A photo fell out one they hadn't seen before. Eleanor and Rose at a school Christmas party. Mason recognized his 5-year-old self in the background, mouth open mid-laugh. Probably at something Eleanor had said. He'd forgotten she used to make him laugh. "Look at Mom's face," Victoria whispered. Rose was looking at Eleanor, not the camera. The expression there, trust, complete, absolute trust, the kind you give someone when you're dying and need to know your children will be loved. Mason's prepaid phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "This is Margaret. Eleanor's awake, asking for Spirit, says he needs his medicine." They looked at the cedar box, at the medical forms, at $4.7 million in hidden money that could solve everything. "She doesn't know," Victoria said, "about Spirit. She's asking for him. While she's dying and asking about the dog." Mason picked up the Cayman documents. his father's signature on the first page, bold and careless. The blank line where Eleanor should go. One signature, 5 seconds. Everything fixed. "We could forge it," Victoria said quietly. "I've seen her sign enough papers." Mason's hand went to Spirit's box. Still faintly warm, like a stone left in afternoon sun. We could tell her the truth about Spirit, about the money, about everything. Tell a dying woman her dog is dead and we need her to commit fraud. Victoria's phone, also prepaid, now lit up. Margaret again. "She's asking for you too now. Says she has something important to tell you about your mother, about their mother, their dead mother, Eleanor, dying. Wanting to tell them something about Rose." Mason stood, picked up Spirit's box. "We go." "With what gas?" He pulled out his $12. "This far, and if we run out, we walk." Victoria gathered the documents, the Cayman accounts, the medical forms, their mother's journal. "She might not even be conscious when we get there." "Or she might be waiting." Mason looked at the oil painting on the wall. His mother's mountains, painted when she was young and believed that she had time. Margaret said room 447. "That's the same number," Victoria said suddenly. "Lot 447B. The shed's lot number." They looked at each other. Rose's hospital room had been 411. Mason remembered now, camping in the waiting room, doing homework under fluorescent lights, watching elevator numbers climb to 4. "It's all connected," Victoria said. "Isn't it everything? Mom, Eleanor, the shed, the roses." Through the conference window, Harold was talking to another client, normal legal business. Wills and trusts and the ordinary transfer of ordinary wealth, not like this, not hidden millions and dying women and the weight of promises made decades ago. Mason tucked Spirit's ashes under his arm. $12 of gas, hospital's 8 miles. We can make it, and if Eleanor won't sign, then we sit with her. Like she sat with Mom. Victoria held up their mother's journal. A yellow sticky note was attached to the back cover, so faded they'd missed it before. Rose's handwriting. Barely legible, Eleanor, if they ever read this. They're ready. Ready for what? The truth. The money, the loss. The elevator dinged in the hallway. They had to decide, stay and try to forge documents, or go and face whatever Eleanor wanted to tell them about their mother. Room 447, Mason said. They left the Cayman documents on Harold's table. $4.7 million in fraud, abandoned on mahogany. In the parking garage stairwell, Victoria counted their steps down, 84 steps to street level, 84 chances to turn back. They didn't. But halfway to Methodist Hospital, the Lexus started making a sound metal on metal, like something grinding itself to death. The Lexus died at the intersection of Maple and 3rd. No dramatic burst of smoke, no loud bang, just the engine cutting out mid-left turn. Victoria wrestled the wheel, momentum carrying them into a McDonald's parking lot. The grinding stopped. Everything stopped. That's it, she said. Shifting into park, the gear stick felt loose, disconnected. Mason checked his phone. 3 miles to Methodist Hospital. He looked at Spirit's box on his lap, then at the dashboard clock, 4:40 p.m. Eleanor had been in a coma for nearly 11 hours. Victoria tried the ignition, clicking sound like beetles in walls. The battery gauge flickered. "Did we walk?" Mason said. 3 miles. He was already out, Spirit's ashes under one arm, their mother's journal under the other. Victoria grabbed the manila folder with Eleanor's medical forms and followed. Her heels, the last designer pair she owned, clicked against asphalt. 4 steps, 8. On the 9th, the heels snapped. She kept walking, limping now, broken shoe scraping concrete. They passed the Starbucks where Victoria used to get her daily venti soy latte with an extra shot. The barista Diane. She'd never bothered learning her name before, was wiping tables by the window. Their eyes met. Diane looked away. "Everyone knows," Victoria said, "about the company, the debts." Mason shifted Spirit's box to his other arm. The cedar had darkened where his palms wet into the wood. Dad built his reputation for 40 years. We destroyed it in 4 days. A bus passed. The Forte line that went straight to Methodist. Fare was $2.50. They had $12, but it was in the car, in Victoria's purse, which she'd left when the grinding started. She looked back. Too far now. Mason's phone rang. The prepaid's shrill tone, nothing like his iPhone's custom ringtone. Margaret's number. "She's asking for you." Margaret's voice, urgent. "She keeps saying the children need to know about the roses." "We're coming? 20 minutes?" "Mason?" Margaret paused. "She's refusing treatment. Says she won't sign anything until she sees you both." The connection cut out. Prepaid minutes exhausted, they walked faster. Past the elementary school, where Eleanor had taught cursive for 30 years. The playground empty, except for one janitor, picking up trash with a grabber tool. He looked up Walter Chen, the security guard from the law building. "Mrs. Whitford's family," he called out. Mason stopped. "You know Eleanor." Walter crossed the playground, his grabber clicking with each step. "She taught my daughter 20 years ago. Lily couldn't write, dyslexia. But Mrs. Whitford stayed after school every day for 3 months, no charge." He looked at the box under Mason's arm. "I heard about the dog. Spirit, right?" Victoria's broken shoe caught on sidewalk crack. She stumbled, caught herself on a chain-link fence. "You knew Spirit?" Mrs. Whitford brought him to school sometimes after she retired, reading therapy dog for the special needs kids. Walter reached into his coveralls, pulled out a worn wallet. "I know about your situation, the company." He extracted 2 20s, held them out. "For a taxi? To the hospital?" Mason stared at the money, $40 from a janitor. "We can't." "You can." Walter pressed the bills into Victoria's hand. "Mrs. Whitford sat with Lily in the hospital when she had meningitis. 12 days. I was working 3 jobs. Couldn't be there. Eleanor was there every night, teaching Lily to write her name again after the fever took her memory." A yellow cab turned the corner. Walter whistled, sharp and loud. It pulled over. "Methodist Hospital, Smitut," he told the driver. "Quick as you can." Mason and Victoria climbed in. The vinyl seats smelled like pine air freshener and someone else's perfume. Through the back window, Walter stood on the sidewalk, raising his grabber tool in something like a salute. The driver, a woman with gray braids, looked in the mirror. "You're the Whitford kids." Victoria's stomach clenched. "Yes. Your stepmother taught my grandson, Marcus. He's at Yale now, pre-med. She wrote his recommendation letter." The driver pulled into traffic. 15-minute drive. I'll make it 10. She ran 2 yellow lights and took corners like a race car driver. Mason held Spirit's box tight, feeling the ashes shift inside with each turn. Victoria pressed her hand against the window, leaving fingerprints on the glass. They passed the community center, through the fence. Mason could see the rose garden Eleanor maintained. 5 elderly women were working there, pulling weeds, deadheading spent blooms. One looked up to Grace Patterson, who'd confronted them that day at the garden shed. She was holding pruning shears in one hand and her phone in the other. The taxi driver's phone buzzed. She glanced at it at a red light. "That's my prayer chain. Says Eleanor Whitford needs help at Methodist, room 47. She looked back at them. "Half the town's praying for her." Victoria's voice came out strangled. "Half the town. The teachers' union, the community center folks, the library volunteers she read to kids every Saturday for 15 years, the hospice workers from when she volunteered there." The light turned green. "Your stepmother touched a lot of lives. Methodist Hospital loomed ahead. 10 stories of glass and concrete. The taxi pulled into the emergency circle. "Meter says 18, the driver said. "But this ride's free. Tell Eleanor that Marcus sends his love." They climbed out, Mason still holding Spirit, Victoria still limping. Through the automatic doors, past the gift shop with its deflated balloons and desperate teddy bears, to the elevator bank where a sign said, "Visiting hours end at 8 p." 3 hours and 7 minutes. The elevator was full. 2 nurses, a man with a bouquet of carnations, a teenage girl crying into her phone. 4th floor button already lit. Everyone getting off at 4. The doors opened to a hallway that smelled like floor wax and something else, that particular hospital smell of hope and grief mixed together. Room Pierre was at the end, past the nurses' station, where 3 women in scrubs were discussing medication doses. "Whitford," one called out, "you're the family?" Mason nodded. "She's been waiting, refusing the insulin. Says she needs to tell you something first." The nurse, her badge said. Kim looked at the box in Mason's arms. "No outside food allowed in patient rooms." "It's not food," Victoria said. It's her dog." Kim's expression softened. "Spirit. She's been asking for Spirit. He died 3 days ago," Mason said. Kim touched her badge, a nervous gesture. "Don't tell her yet. Let her say what she needs to say. She's fighting to stay conscious for you." They walked the last 20 feet. The door to 447 was cracked open. Through the gap, they could hear something singing, soft, tuneless, but definitely singing. Mason pushed the door wider. Eleanor was propped up in the hospital bed, IV in her arm, oxygen tubes in her nose. Her eyes were closed, but her lips moved, humming something Mason almost recognized. A hymn, maybe, or a lullaby. Margaret sat in the visitor's chair, holding Eleanor's hand. She looked up when they entered. "Thank God," she whispered. "She won't let them give her the insulin. Says she has to tell you about your mother first." Eleanor's eyes opened, gray as February sky, but clouded now, unfocused. "Mason, Victoria?" "We're here," Victoria said, moving to the bedside. Eleanor's hand lifted, trembling. She pointed at Spirit's box. "You brought him?" Mason set the box on the bedside table. "Yes." "Good." Eleanor's voice was dry leaves scraping. "Your mother? Rose? She needs you to know." Her eyes rolled back. The heart monitor spiked, then steadied. "Eleanor?" Margaret squeezed her hand. Eleanor's eyes opened again, but looking past them now, at something they couldn't see. "Rose is here. She says the roses need water, the pink one especially. Victoria's Rose." Victoria grabbed the bed rail. Her mother had been dead 14 years. "Eleanor," Mason said, "Mom's gone. You're in the hospital. You need insulin." "No." Eleanor's hand found his. Her skin felt like paper, dry and too warm. "First, you need to know the money, the real money." "The Cayman account?" Mason asked. Eleanor's laugh was more like a cough. "No, the other account, the one Rose left." Margaret looked confused. "What account?" Eleanor's eyes focused for a moment, sharp and clear. Rose knew Thomas would fail eventually. She opened her own account in 19, put her whole inheritance from her parents in it. "For the children," she said, "but only if they learned." "Learned what?" Victoria's voice cracked. "How to see people, really see them, not what they own, not what they can give you, who they are." Eleanor's breathing went ragged. "The account number is in the shed, under the vermiculite. 12 million now, with interest." Mason's legs went weak. 12 million? But there's a condition." Eleanor's eyes started to drift again. "You can only access it if you do one thing." "What?" Victoria leaned closer. Eleanor's hand went to Spirit's box. Her fingers traced the wood grain. Your mother made me promise. If you ever came to me broken, really broken, I had to let you fall all the way down until you could see. See what? Mason asked. Eleanor's eyes closed. The heart monitor's rhythm changed. See that love isn't about saving someone. It's about sitting with them while they save themselves. A nurse rushed in. Not Kim. Someone new. She needs insulin now. Her blood sugar's critical. Eleanor's hand tightened on Mason's. The Rose Garden. Community Center. There's something else. Under the pink rose, your mother left. Her body went rigid. The monitor started screaming. More nurses poured in, pushing Mason and Victoria back. Code blue, room 407. The intercom blared. Someone shoved them into the hallway. Through the door's window, they could see the medical team working, Eleanor's body jerking with each compression. Margaret pressed against Victoria, sobbing. She was waiting for you, holding on just to tell you. Mason still held their mother's journal. A page had fallen out in the chaos. Their mother's handwriting, dated a week before she died. If you're reading this, my loves, then Eleanor kept her promise. She let you fall. She let you hurt. She let you learn. That's the hardest kind of love, the kind that stands back when every instinct says to reach out. The account is real. The money is yours. But only if you can answer one question. What's the difference between being saved and being loved? The code blue alarm kept blaring. Through the window, Eleanor's body had gone still. A doctor was looking at his watch, about to call it. Then her hand moved, just a finger, really, pointing at something, pointing at Spirit's box, still on the bedside table. The doctor's hand was still raised, about to call time of death, when Eleanor's finger moved again, not pointing now, scratching, against the bedsheet, making shapes. She's writing, the nurse said. Get them back in here. Mason and Victoria pushed through the door. The medical team parted. Eleanor's eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling, but her finger kept moving, letter by letter. Her old teacher's cursive, invisible on white cotton. ROSES. She wants us to go to the roses, Victoria said. Now Eleanor's fingers stopped, her eyes closed. The heart monitor steadied, weak but consistent. The doctor injected insulin directly into her IV port, his movements quick, practiced. We've got her, he said. But she's refusing additional treatment, says she won't sign anything until... He looked at the invisible writing on the sheet. Until you understand about the roses. Margaret tugged Mason's sleeve. The community center, the Rose Garden. She goes there every morning at 6. There's something under the pink rose, Mason said, remembering Eleanor's words. Mom left something. The doctor checked Eleanor's blood sugar. 72, still critical. She needs a glucose drip, full diabetic protocol, but without consent. We're listed as next of kin. Victoria said, we can sign. No. The word came from Eleanor, barely audible. Her eyes stayed closed. First, the roses. Both of you, together. Kim, the first nurse, touched Mason's arm. She's been like this for hours. Won't let us treat her properly until you do what she asks. Mason looked at Spirit's box, at Eleanor's finger, still now against the white sheet. At the clock, 5:23 p.m. How long can she last without treatment? The doctor pulled him aside, voice low. Her organs are starting to shut down. Kidneys first, then liver. Maybe 6 hours before irreversible damage. 6 hours. The community center was 15 minutes away, 15 back. But they had no car, no money. Walter's $40 spent on the taxi. "I'll drive you," Margaret said. "My car's downstairs." They left Eleanor with the medical team hovering, Spirit's ashes still on her bedside table. In the elevator, Victoria held their mother's journal against her chest. A new page had come loose, not their mother's writing. Eleanor's, October 10th, 2010. "Rose asked me to write this down. Says she won't make it to next week. Wants M and V to know, but not yet, not until they're ready. The money isn't Thomas's, never was. Her grandmother left her everything, the old Patterson fortune, $12 million in 1998. She hid it from Thomas because she knew what he was, knew he'd burn through it. She put it in trust for the kids, but with conditions. They have to lose everything first, have to choose love over money, have to learn what she never could teach them while Thomas was watching. I promised to let them fall when the time came. It's the hardest promise I've ever made." Margaret's car was a 1994 Buick that smelled like mothballs and cinnamon. She drove like someone who'd learned before power steering, both hands gripping the wheel. Shoulders hunched forward, Mason sat in back with their mother's journal. Victoria navigated from the passenger seat, her broken shoe forgotten on the hospital floor. They passed the bank that had foreclosed on their father's business accounts. The windows were dark except for the ATM glow. Mason's reflection in the glass looked like someone else, hollow cheeks, stubble, his $1,000 haircut grown out ragged. "Turn here," Victoria said. The community center parking lot held 7 cars. Mason recognized them all. Grace Patterson's Honda, Walter Chen's pickup, 3 others belonging to the Garden Volunteers. Margaret's Buick made 8. The Rose Garden gate was open. Not unusual, it was always open during daylight. But the women were all there, standing in a semicircle around one particular bush, the pink hybrid. Victoria's rose. Eleanor had called it. Grace Patterson held a shovel. Dirt was already mounded beside the bush. A hole started but not finished. She looked up when they approached. "Eleanor called us 3 hours ago," she said. "Told us to start digging, but wait for you to finish." Mason knelt beside the hole. The earth smelled rich, full of compost and years of Eleanor's careful tending. His fingers found something hard about 18 inches down, metal, a box like a small safe wrapped in plastic. Victoria helped him lift it out. Heavy, maybe 20 pounds. The plastic was yellowed but intact, sealed with duct tape that had gone brittle. Through the cloudy wrapping, they could see a combination lock. "The combination?" Grace said. "Eleanor said you'd know it." Mason looked at Victoria. They didn't know any room 47. Victoria whispered, "Try 46." The lock was stiff. Mason spun the dial. 447. Nothing. "The shed lot number," Victoria said. 447B. Still nothing. Mason's hands were shaking now, leaving dirt smears on the metal. Margaret knelt beside them. "Your mother's birthday, March 15th. Mason said. 315. Click. The lock opened. Inside the plastic, inside the box. 3 things. A manila envelope thick with documents. A videotape. The old Vishkid. And another letter. This one in their mother's handwriting on her personal stationery. The expensive cream paper with her initials embossed at the top. Mason opened the letter. His mother's perfume, 20 years old, still clung to the paper. "My darling children, if you're reading this, you've lost everything." "Good. I know that sounds cruel, but your father's money was poison. It made you blind, made you suspicious of kindness, made you measure love in dollars. The Patterson fortune is yours, all $12 million plus 20 years of interest. The documents are here. the lawyers' names, the account numbers. But there's a test. You have to answer one question on camera together. The videotape is blank. Record your answer. If Eleanor believes you understand, she'll release the funds. If not, the money goes to the community center. The question, what did Spirit teach you about love, Spirit? The dog you ignored for years. The dog Eleanor fed when you forgot. The dog who loved you anyway, every time you came home. I'm dying as I write this. The cancer has reached my brain. I see things that aren't there, or maybe are there, but only I can see. I see Eleanor 20 years from now, giving up her medicine for that dog. I see you two standing over his ashes, finally understanding. I see your father's empire crumbling and taking your pride with it. I love you both. But love isn't rescue. Love is letting you become who you're meant to be, even if that means letting you hurt first. Mom, Victoria was crying, not pretty tears, the ugly kind, with snot and gasping. Mascara she couldn't afford to replace ran in black rivers. Spirit, she said. She wants us to talk about Spirit. Grace Patterson set down the shovel. Eleanor's been paying for that dog's medicine for 2 years. Out of her Social Security, $900 a month for the arthritis shots. She went without her diabetes medication so that dog could walk without pain. Walter Chen had arrived, still in his janitor coveralls. She brought Spirit here every week. He could barely walk, but the kids loved him. He'd just lay there and let them pet him for hours. More people were gathering. Mason recognized some, the librarian, the grocery clerk who always asked about Eleanor, the pharmacist who'd filled Spirit's prescriptions thinking they were for Eleanor. We have to go back, Mason said. Get the camera from the hospital. Tell her about his phone rang. The hospital. Mr. Whitford. This is Dr. Martinez. Your Eleanor. She's asking for you. Oh, her kidneys are failing. We need consent for dialysis now, or we'll be there in 10 minutes. Yes. Yeah, but Margaret's Buick wouldn't start. The engine turned over once, twice, then nothing. Battery dead. Walter's truck was blocked in. Grace's Honda had a flat. It's like something doesn't want us to leave, Victoria said. Mason looked at the rose garden, the pink bush where they dug up the bach, or other roses, white, red, yellow, colors he didn't know the names for, all of them planted by their mother, all of them kept alive by Eleanor. Maybe we're supposed to answer here, he said. Now. With what camera? Margaret pulled out her phone. I have video. The quality. Does it matter? Mason looked at the gathering crowd. 20 people now. All here because of Eleanor. Mom wanted us to understand something about love, about Spirit, about letting go. Victoria picked up the empty box that had held their mother's letter. There was something else inside, stuck to the bottom. Another photo, Polaroid, faded, Spirit as a puppy. Their mother, holding him, Eleanor beside her, and in the background, barely visible, Mason and Victoria, maybe 10 and 7, playing in the sprinkler, not looking at the camera, not aware of the dying woman and her friend making plans for their future. The timestamp, July 4th night, 3 months before their mother died. She planned all of this, Victoria said, 24 years ago. Mason's phone buzzed. Text from Dr. Martinez. Eleanor's asking for Spirit. She keeps saying, bring me my barca. We need consent in the next 30 minutes, or we lose her. Mason looked at the assembled crowd, at the roses, at the hole in the ground where $12 million had been buried for over 2 decades. We need to tell her about Spirit, he said. Tell her he's gone. That'll kill her, Margaret said. In her condition, or it'll free her, Victoria said. To let go, to stop fighting for everyone else and let us fight for her. Grace Patterson stepped forward. What about the money? The $12 million don't you need to make the video? Mason looked at his sister, at the dirt under his fingernails, at the crowd of people who'd come because Eleanor needed them. We'll make it, he said. But first, we go back. Tell Eleanor the truth about Spirit. Sign the papers for her treatment. Save her life. With what money? Walter asked. The hospital needs $15,000 just to start treatment. Mason looked at the documents from the box. Legal papers, account numbers, $12 million waiting, but also a business card paperclipped to the front, Harold's card, with a note in their mother's handwriting. In case of emergency, Harold has power to release funds for medical care only, no questions asked. Harold, Mason said. He's known all along. He dialed on his prepaid. Harold answered on the first ring. The hospital called me, Harold said. I'm already here, room 407. I have the papers. $15,000 released for Eleanor's care. But Mason, she's fading. Whatever you need to tell her, do it now. The sun was setting. October light turned the roses gold and red and pink, their mother's roses. Eleanor's roses, all of them blooming against the odds. Everyone come, Victoria said to the crowd. She needs to see, needs to know she's not alone. 23 people piled into various cars, a convoy of ordinary people racing against time. Mason clutched Spirit's ashes still in the car from the hospital trip. Victoria held their mother's journal. Margaret drove with both hands at 10 and 2, pushing her old Buick to 60 in a 30 zone. The hospital security guard tried to stop them. Visiting hours were over. But Kim, the nurse, appeared. Let them through, she said. All of them. Room 447 needs witnesses. They flooded the hallway. Mason first, then Victoria, then 20 people who'd been touched by Eleanor's quiet kindness. The door to 447 was open. Eleanor lay still, eyes closed. Harold sat beside her with papers spread on the bedside table. Dr. Martinez adjusted IV drips, watched monitors, worked with quiet efficiency. Eleanor, Mason said. Her eyes opened, unfocused. Searching. We found it, Victoria said. Under the roses, Mom's letter, the money, all of it. Eleanor's hand lifted slightly, reaching. Mason knew what she wanted. He placed Spirit's box in her hands. Her fingers traced the wood. He's gone, Mason said. 3 days ago, peacefully. We were with him. Eleanor's eyes found his, clear, suddenly, present. Good, she whispered. He's with Rose now. Then her hand did something unexpected. She pushed the box back toward Mason's. Scatter him, she said, in the roses, with your mother. Victoria was crying again. Eleanor, we're sorry for everything, for not seeing you, for not... Shh. Eleanor's finger moved to her lips. No sorry, just love. Harold pushed papers forward. The medical consent. Sign here. Mason signed. Victoria signed. The doctor immediately started connecting new IV bags, adjusting machines. Eleanor's eyes moved to the crowd in the doorway. Grace, Walter, Margaret, all of them. My family, she whispered. Then her eyes closed. The monitors steadied. Breathing regular. She'll be okay, Dr. Martinez said. With treatment, she'll recover. Mason looked at Spirit's box, at the crowd of witnesses, at his sister. We still have to make the video, he said. Answer Mom's question. What question? Harold asked. Victoria held up their mother's letter. What did Spirit teach us about love? Harold smiled the first time Mason had ever seen him really smile. I know that answer. Rose told me before she died, but you have to figure it out yourselves. Through the window. The October moon was rising. Somewhere in the rose garden, a hole waited to be filled, either with spirit's ashes or with disappointment. $12 million hung in the balance. But first, Eleanor's hand moved again, writing on the sheet, L-O-O-Q-N-D-E-R, T-H-E. Under the what? Mason asked. But Eleanor was asleep, really asleep this time, not unconscious. The peaceful sleep of someone who'd finally set down a burden they'd carried for 24 years. Harold stood. She'll be out for hours. The medication. Mason looked at the incomplete message. Look under the... What? Then he saw it. Spirit's box had shifted when Eleanor pushed it back. Underneath, stuck to the bottom, was a key, an old key, brass, with a number stamped on it, foresight. The key was warm, from Eleanor's hand. Mason turned it over worn brass, teeth filed smooth from use. The number 447 had been stamped deep, still sharp after decades. Storage unit, Harold said. Downtown facility. Your mother rented it in '99. Victoria's broken shoe scraped linoleum as she shifted. How do you know? I helped set it up. Part of her estate planning. Harold gathered his papers. Lakeside Storage, Unit 47. She paid 25 years in advance. The crowd in the hallway had thinned. Grace Patterson remained, Walter Chen, Margaret. The others had drifted away as Eleanor's breathing steadied. As the crisis passed into waiting, we should go tomorrow, Victoria said. When Eleanor's awake? No. Margaret touched the key in Mason's hand. She wanted you to see it now, tonight, while she couldn't stop you. Mason looked at Eleanor, sleeping. The oxygen tube whistled slightly with each breath. Her hand lay open on the white sheet, palm up, as if releasing something. Harold checked his watch, 8:47 p.m. Lakeside closes at 9. If you leave now. Mason pocketed the key. It clinked against his last 3 quarters. Victoria followed, still limping. In the elevator, she pulled off both shoes, stood barefoot on the cold metal floor. Margaret drove. Her Buick had mysteriously started working again, though the engine knocked with each acceleration. The October night had turned cold. Mason's breath fogged the window as they passed the remains of his life, the locked office building, the foreclosed house, the empty boutique with its for lease sign crooked in the window, Lakeside Storage squatted between a check-cashing store and a boarded-up restaurant. The office light was on. A man in a security uniform looked up when they entered. We're closing in 8 minutes. Mason showed him the key. Unit 447, Rose Whitford's. The guard's expression changed. He pulled out a thick ledger, pages yellow with age. Whitford? Yeah. Special instructions. He ran his finger down a column. Says here, only 2 people can access. Eleanor Whitford and... He looked up. You got ID. Mason pulled out his driver's license. Victoria found hers in her purse, the one item she'd managed to keep through the financial collapse. Mason and Victoria Whitford. The guard nodded. Units in Building D, through the back, last row. I'll keep the lights on, but I'm locking the gate at 9:15. Building D smelled like rust and mice. Their footsteps echoed on concrete. Unit 447 was at the very end, a small locker, maybe 5 by 5. The padlock was identical to the one on the buried box. Mason tried the same combination his mother's birthday. It opened, inside boxes, dozens of them, stacked neat as Eleanor's cursive, each one labeled in their mother's handwriting. Mason, age 5. Victoria, first day of school, Christmas 1997, last summer. Mason pulled out the closest box, inside a baseball glove, child-sized, the leather cracked. He remembered it his first glove, the one he'd thrown away after striking out in Little League playoffs. Somehow it was here. Victoria opened another box, her ballet shoes from 3rd grade, the recital program, a photo of her on stage, Eleanor in the audience, barely visible in the back row. She was there, Victoria whispered. I didn't even know she was there. More boxes. Report cards Mason thought were lost. Art projects Victoria assumed were thrown away. Birthday cards never sent. Letters never mailed. 24 years of moments their mother had saved. Eleanor had preserved. At the back, a larger box. For both, open last. Inside a VHS tape labeled Rose's last message. And below it, wrapped in tissue paper, something that made Mason's knees buckle. Spirit's collar, not the worn one from his final days, but a puppy collar, red leather, tiny, with a tag that read, If found, please return to the Whitford children. They need me. Victoria picked up the VHS tape. No way to play it here, but underneath was a note, their mother's handwriting shaky now, clearly near the end. The vet has the video player. To Hayward, he kept it for me. He knows you'll come. To Hayward, he'd euthanized Spirit 3 days ago. His office was 7 minutes away. They loaded 3 boxes into Margaret's trunk, couldn't resist taking something. The storage unit gate was closing as they pulled out, the guard locking it with a chain that rattled like bones. Riverside Veterinary was dark except for the emergency entrance. Dr. Hayward's car was still there, a old Subaru with a faded coexist bumper sticker. Mason knocked on the glass door. Dr. Hayward appeared, still in scrubs. I was waiting, he said. Eleanor called this morning, said you'd come tonight. This morning, when she was in a diabetic coma. How had she called? The vet led them to his office. An old TV sat on a filing cabinet, vehicle connected with cables held together by duct tape. He inserted the tape, pressed play, left them alone. Static. Then their mother's face filled the screen, but not the mother they remembered from the end, skeletal. Bald, from chemo. This was their mother, from before, maybe a year before diagnosis. Healthy, vibrant, sitting in what looked like this same office. My darling children, she said, if you're watching this, you've lost everything, and you've found Eleanor. She paused, looked off camera. Someone handed her something. Spirit. A tiny puppy Spirit, maybe 8 weeks old. This is Spirit, their mother continued. I'm giving him to Eleanor to give to you, but not yet, not until you're ready to see what he can teach you. The puppy yawned, showing needle teeth. Their mother smiled, the real smile, not the brave one she wore during treatment. Your father doesn't love me, hasn't for years. I'm useful to him, my family name, my connections, my silence about his debts, but not loved. She scratched Spirit's ears. I won't leave him, can't. He'd destroy himself and take you both with him. So I'm doing something else. She set Spirit down. He immediately tried to eat her shoelace. I'm building you a safety net, but one that only appears when you fall. Eleanor will let you fall. I've asked her to, because that's what Spirit will teach you, that love isn't about being saved. It's about choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. The camera shifted. Someone else was holding it now. Eleanor came into frame, younger, her hair still mostly brown. She sat beside Rose. Tell them, Rose said to Eleanor. Eleanor looked directly at the camera. Your mother is leaving me everything, not Thomas, me, to hold for you until you're ready. How will you know we're ready? It was Mason's voice. But young Mason, maybe 11, he was behind the camera. Their mother reached for the camera, turned it around. There was young Mason, holding it like a news reporter. Victoria beside him, 7 years old, gap-toothed. You'll be ready, their mother said. When you can love someone who can't give you anything, when you can sit with someone who's dying and not try to fix them, when you understand that spirit old, sick, useless spirit is worth more than all the money in the world. Young Victoria piped up. But he's just a puppy. Now he is. Their mother turned the camera back to herself. But someday he'll be old, sick, expensive, useless to everyone but the person who loves him. And that person, the one who loves him, then, not now when he's cute, that person will understand what love really is. The tape flickered. Different day now. Their mother in a hospital bed, the same room, 4-7, dying now. Clearly dying, Eleanor beside her, holding her hand. Last thing, their mother whispered, the money. It's not 12 million. That was a test, too. If they only come for 12, they're not ready. How much? Eleanor asked. 47 million. Their mother's eyes drifted closed, opened again. My grandmother was a Patterson. Oil money, all of it hidden, waiting, but only if... If what? If they choose love over money. If they sign away their rights to save you. Eleanor, if they let you die rather than force you to commit fraud. If they understand that spirit's ashes are worth more than millions. The tape ended. Static filled the screen. Mason realized he was sitting on the floor. He didn't remember falling. Victoria was beside him, holding Spirit's puppy collar. 47 million, she said. Dr. Hayward opened the door. There's more. Your mother left something else. He handed Mason a manila envelope. Spirit's medical records. The real ones. Mason opened it. 15 pages of treatments, surgeries, medications. The total at the bottom, $47,000 over 12 years. Eleanor paid it all, Dr. Hayward said. Cash, sold her car, mortgaged her condo, gave up her medication. For a dog. Because your mother asked her to keep him alive until you were ready to see. A note was clipped to the back. Eleanor's handwriting, dated yesterday I failed. You weren't ready. Spirit died before you learned. I'm sorry. Rose, I'm so sorry. Mason looked at the timestamp. Eleanor had written this while in a coma. Impossible. His phone rang. The hospital. Mr. Whitford. Kim's voice. Eleanor's awake. She's asking for you. She says to bring Spirit home. Mason looked at the cedar box he'd been carrying all day, at the puppy collar in Victoria's hands, at the $47 million waiting for them to prove they understood love. We're coming, he said. But when he stood, something fell from the manila envelope, a second key, newer than the storage unit key, with a tag attached for when you understand. Rose. The tag had an address. Mason recognized it. It was their childhood home, the one foreclosed 4 days ago, the one with a locksmith's notice on the door. But this wasn't a house key. It was a safe deposit box key. And the bank name on the tag. It wasn't their father's bank. It wasn't even an American bank. It was the Bank of Luxembourg, the same Luxembourg that had just seized everything they owned. The Luxembourg key was heavier than brass should be. Mason felt it pulling his pocket down as Margaret drove them back to Methodist Hospital. Victoria held Spirit's cedar box, her thumb rubbing the same spot until the wood grew warm. Room 447 smelled different, less antiseptic, more human. Eleanor was propped up, IV fluids running clear into her arm. Her eyes tracked them as they entered, alert now, present. You found it, she said, not a question. Mason pulled out both keys, the storage unit, the Luxembourg box. Mom left us more than money. Eleanor's hand trembled as she pointed to the visitor's chair. Harold, Bottom of his briefcase, your father's laptop. Harold had been sitting in the corner, silent. He pulled out a silver MacBook, the Apple logo half scratched off. Mason recognized it his father's, the one from his office. Password is your mother's birthday backwards, Eleanor said. 51303. Mason typed it. The screen came alive. Desktop cluttered with files, most marked confidential or do not share. But one folder sat alone, labeled for my children watch after I'm gone. Inside, a single video file, date stamped January 15th, 8 months ago. The day before Thomas's stroke, Mason clicked play. Their father's face filled the screen. He was in his office, the one now belonging to Zhao International. Behind him, the wall of awards and photos, 40 years of business success. But his face looked wrong, puffy, red-rimmed eyes. Mason, Victoria. His voice was thick, like he'd been drinking or crying. If you're watching this, I'm gone, and you've discovered the truth, the debts, the lies, all of it. Picked up a glass of what looked like whiskey, set it down without drinking. Your mother was smarter than me, always was. She saw what I was becoming 20 years ago, saw that I'd destroy everything she loved if given the chance. He laughed, bitter. She was right. I borrowed against her roses. Did you know that used the garden as collateral for a loan in 2010? Lost it all on a deal that went bad. Victoria's intake of breath was sharp. The roses, their mother's roses. But Eleanor, Thomas continued, Eleanor bought it back with her teacher's retirement, every penny she'd saved for 30 years. She didn't tell me until last week. He rubbed his face. I went to the garden to cut them all down. Rage, stupid rage, but she was there. 3 a.m, she was there, watering them in the dark. The video flickered when it steadied. Thomas had moved closer to the camera. She said Rose knew I'd do this, knew I'd destroy even the memory of her. So she asked Eleanor to marry me, not for love, for protection from me. His laugh sounded like choking. My dying wife asked another woman to marry me, to protect her children from their own father. Mason's phone vibrated. Harold leaned over, whispered, That's why the Luxembourg Bank is involved. Your father used their subsidiary for the illegal loans. Thomas continued on screen. I know about the money Rose hid. Eleanor told me last week, $47 million up. But here's what Eleanor doesn't know. I found more. Your mother's grandmother didn't just leave 47 at us. She left 71 million. The rest is in Luxembourg, box 447. The box key in Mason's pocket suddenly felt like it was burning. But I can't access it, Thomas said. Rose was too smart. She required 3 signatures. Hers was impossible now. Eleanor's she'd never sign, and yours, both of yours, but only after you've proven you understand something. He held up a document to the camera. Mason could barely read it, old paper, legal language. The Patterson Trust has a morality clause. You can only inherit if you've shown, and I quote, compassion to those who cannot repay it, love to those who cannot earn it, and sacrifice for those who cannot appreciate it. Thomas set down the paper. His hands were shaking. I've failed all 3, but Eleanor, she passed without knowing there was a test. He looked directly at the camera. The night your mother died, she made me promise something, made me swear on her deathbed. I had to let Eleanor raise you until you hated her, then let you destroy her, then let her save you anyway. Victoria dropped Spirit's box. It hit the hospital floor with a crack. The cedar split along the grain. I kept that promise. Thomas continued. Poisoned you against her, made you see her as a gold digger, made sure you'd blame her for everything. His voice broke. It was easy. You wanted someone to hate, and she let you hate her for 13 years. She let you hate her while she loved you anyway. The screen went black for a moment. Then Thomas reappeared, holding something, a pill bottle. These are Eleanor's diabetes pills, the real ones. I've been switching them with sugar pills for 3 months. She doesn't know, thinks the medicine isn't working. He set the bottle down. I wanted her to die before you figured it out, before you could forgive her, before Rose's plan could work. Mason's legs gave out. He caught himself on the bed rail. Eleanor's hand found his. I know, she whispered. Found the real pills last month. Took them anyway. The sugar ones? Why? Victoria's voice cracked. Because he needed to confess. And confession requires guilt. On screen, Thomas was standing now, swaying slightly. Tomorrow, I'm going to the office. I'm going to call Luxembourg, tell them to accelerate the loan default, take everything, leave you with nothing. He gripped the desk, and then Eleanor will save you or let you drown. Either way, you'll finally see her. He reached for the camera, then stopped. The dog, Spirit. Your mother rescued him the day she was diagnosed, but said he was practice for learning to love something dying. His face crumpled. I killed that dog's mother. Hit her with my car. Speeding to a meeting. Left her to die on the road. Your mother saw it happen. She followed me home. Confronted me. I laughed. It was just a dog, I said. The video shook. Thomas was crying now. Ugly sobs that made his shoulders heave. She said that's how she knew I'd treat her when she got sick, like roadkill. Inconvenient, in the way. He wiped his face with his sleeve. She was right. I was planning to divorce her when she got diagnosed, had the papers drawn up. But then she got sick, and suddenly I was the grieving husband. Good for business. Sympathy. Mason felt Eleanor's fingers tighten on his hand, her pulse through thin skin, steady, alive. Eleanor knows none of this, Thomas said. She thinks I loved Rose, thinks I'm grieving, thinks my cruelty to her is just pain. He looked directly at the camera. Tell her Rose knew exactly who I was. Tell her she was chosen not despite my cruelty, but because of it. Rose needed someone I couldn't break. The video ended. The laptop screen went dark. Harold stood up, pulled another folder from his briefcase. There's more. Your mother's medical records. The real ones. He handed them to Mason, clipped to the front, a note in Rose's handwriting. Eleanor, if they find this, they're ready for the truth. I never had cancer. I had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. I would have lived 2 more years, unable to move, speak, breathe. I chose to let everyone think it was cancer, chose to die while I could still choose. The morphine overdose was deliberate. I died on October 15th at 3:47 a.m., room 447. I chose those numbers, building 4, lot 4 for Saïd, box 47, because 4 plus 7:15. October 15th, the day I chose to leave, so Eleanor could arrive. Victoria was on the floor now, knees pulled to her chest. Spirit's ashes had spilled from the cracked box, gray dust on white linoleum. Eleanor slowly sat up, pulled out her IV. Don't, Kim the nurse said from the doorway. I need to go to the Roses. Eleanor said, now, tonight, while they still bloom. She stood, barefoot, hospital gown hanging loose, reached for Spirit's ashes, scooped them with her cupped palms back into the broken box. Rose is there, she said, waiting. Mason looked at the Luxembourg key, $71 million in a box, his mother's suicide note in his hand, his father's confession on a laptop, Eleanor standing barefoot in Spirit's ashes. How? He asked, How can Mom be waiting?" Eleanor smiled, not the polite smile she'd worn for 13 years, but something deeper, older, true. "Because I scattered her ashes there, October 5th, 2010, in the pink rose, Victoria's rose." She looked at the broken cedar box. "She's been waiting for Spirit and for you." Through the window, October moonlight turned the parking lot silver. Somewhere across town, $47 million sat in trust. Somewhere in Luxembourg, another $24 million waited in a box. But Eleanor was already walking toward the door, hospital gown flapping, carrying a dead dog toward a dead woman's roses. And Mason realized they still hadn't answered the question. What did Spirit teach them about love? The answer was there, scattered on the hospital floor with his ashes. But Mason couldn't see it yet. Could only follow Eleanor's bare feet down the hall, leaving gray paw prints in the dust. The rose garden at twilight held different shadows now. 3 Thanksgivings had passed since Eleanor walked barefoot from the hospital, Spirit's ashes cupped in her palms. Mason stood where the pink rose grew taller now, wilder, its roots fed by his mother and a dog who'd loved without conditions. "Table's ready," Victoria called from the community center. Her voice carried different notes, now steadier, worn smooth by 3 years of answering phones at the senior housing office they'd built in their father's mansion. Mason's hands were dirty from pulling weeds. He'd been working the garden since 5:30 that morning, the way Eleanor had taught him, no gloves, skin to swile. The thorns had left their daily map of scratches up his forearms. Inside, the community center's main room smelled like turkey and Margaret's green bean casserole. Mismatched plates covered 3 folding tables pushed together. 28 people this year. Last year was 19. The year before, just 7. Eleanor sat at the far end, teaching Sophie Mason's 8-year-old daughter from his failed first marriage to write cursive. The child's tongue poked out in concentration as she formed each letter. Eleanor's hand, steady, despite 75 years and diabetic neuropathy, guided without touching, like this. "Grandma Eleanor." The word grandma still made Mason's chest tight. Sophie had started calling her that 6 months ago. Eleanor never corrected her. "Perfect," Eleanor said. "Now try your mother's name." Sophie wrote carefully, Jennifer. Her mother, who'd left when Sophie was 2, who sent birthday cards but never visited, who'd signed away custody for $10,000 that Mason had borrowed from the Patterson Trust. Victoria appeared beside Mason, her hand resting on her stomach, 7 months pregnant at 44. The father was James from Mason's old office, the assistant who'd called about the Luxembourg deadline. They'd met again at the food bank, both volunteering, both rebuilding. "Harold's here," she said. The old lawyer had aged backward somehow. Retirement suited him. He carried a pie, store-bought, still in plastic container. Nobody minded. He'd been the one to navigate the Luxembourg accounts, to structure the trust disbursements, to keep them from touching the money until they were ready. "How much is left?" Mason asked him quietly. $63 million, Harold said. "The trust earned more than you've spent." They'd used $8 million so far. The senior housing conversion, the Rose Garden expansion, medical debt forgiveness for 17 families in the county, Eleanor's diabetes treatment at the Mayo Clinic, all approved by the Trust's board, 5 people who'd known Rose, including Harold and Hayward. Walter Chen arrived with his daughter Lily, now 27, a special education teacher. She hugged Eleanor long and hard. Behind them, Grace Patterson pushed her walker, her own daughter helping. The librarian brought cranberry sauce. The pharmacist brought rolls. People who'd become family through proximity and time and Eleanor's quiet gravity that pulled broken things together. "Speech?" Someone called out. Mason always does a speech. Mason looked at his hands. Still dirty? 3 years ago, he would have excused himself to wash them. Now he picked up his water glass with soil still under his nails. I'm not good at speeches, he said. But Eleanor taught me something. Family isn't about blood or paper. It's about showing up every day, especially when there's nothing in it for you. A bark interrupted him from under the table. A puppy emerged, golden retriever mix, maybe 4 months old. Hope. They'd found her behind the center 2 months ago, abandoned, ribs showing. Eleanor had said no. Mason and Victoria had kept her anyway. Hope dragged something in her mouth. Spirit's old collar, the red one from when he was a puppy. She dropped it at Eleanor's feet. Tail wagging so hard her whole back end swayed. Eleanor picked it up. The leather had softened with age, the tag still readable. If found, please return to the Whitford children, but they need me. We found the answer, Victoria said suddenly, to Mom's question. What Spirit taught us about love? Everyone turned to look at her. Love is staying, Victoria said. When leaving would be easier, when staying costs everything, when the person you're staying for can't even thank you. Her hand found her belly. Spirit stayed, Eleanor stayed, and now we stay. Eleanor stood slowly. She walked to the window overlooking the rose garden. The pink rose was visible even in fading light, its last blooms of the season holding on despite November cold. Your mother knew something, Eleanor said. Love isn't a feeling. It's a choice that you make every morning to show up, to tend the roses, to feed the dog, to teach the child, to forgive the unforgivable. She turned back to the room. Her eyes found Mason's, then Victoria's. Pass the potatoes, please. Such ordinary words, but Mason heard everything underneath them. 13 years of patient waiting. 24 years of kept promises. $47 million, that meant nothing compared to this table, these people, this moment. He passed the potatoes. Outside, the roses held their last blooms against the coming winter. In the spring, they'd bloom again, and Mason would be there to tend them, the way Eleanor had, the way his mother had trusted someone would. The puppy Hope curled at Eleanor's feet, already learning what Spirit had known, that love wasn't about being saved. It was about choosing to stay, connecting hearts. I need to tell you something. This story about Eleanor, Mason, and Victoria, it's really about you and me, about the Eleanor in your life you haven't noticed yet, the one who waters your roses while you're looking at the thorns. Maybe it's the neighbor who brings your mail when you're sick, the teacher who stayed late, the stranger who paid for your coffee that one bad morning. We all have someone loving us without credit, without thanks, without us even knowing. And we're all somebody's Eleanor too. Choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. That's what Spirit taught me. What I hope this story teaches you. Love isn't the grand gesture. It's showing up tomorrow to water roses that aren't yours, for people who might never thank you. But you do it anyway, because that's what love is. Disclaimer. This is a work of fiction inspired by universal themes of family and redemption, created solely for entertainment purposes. This story does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence or harmful behavior. All characters and events are products of the author's imagination, and any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental. The story explores themes of forgiveness and personal growth through entirely fictional scenarios.